Okay. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be here with you all. Um, yeah, just waiting for people to come in and yay. Yeah, well, it's nice to see everybody. And it's nice to be back for Mahamudra for the People. We are um, picking up from where we last left off. This Doha by the Mahasiddha Sabraha, who's one of my all-time personal favorites, uh, on Mahamudra, obviously. So, and rather than go through the whole spiel that I've given at the beginning of each one about, where this text comes from, very briefly, it comes from a collection compiled by the 16th Karmapa and produced sometime in the early 1970s in Bhutan. Um, and I guess maybe I'll just go through the whole manuscript, for the rest of this year. So that might be a good thing to keep some of the Siddha energy alive. Um, and so I am going to step back a little bit, though, from I'm not going to continue exactly from where we started off because there's some juiciness for us to kind of come right back to. But before we do, maybe we can sit in the juiciness of our own mind for a little bit of time. And I'm currently not in the room that I like to be for this kind of stuff, so I don't have my big fancy Zen gong next to me to ring. So you're just going to have to use my imperfect voice as the indicator that the meditation session is starting and or has finished. So forgive me for that. Um, but in preparation, if you can, allow yourself to get as comfortable as you can physically. Uh, seated, if seated feels good, laying down, if laying down feels better. If you lay down, be a corpse, be freshly dead, right? Let every thought go. Imagine that you've just died and there's nothing going on. If you're seated, then allow yourself to rest comfortably in a seated position. Allow yourself to let go of the 3 times, so letting go of the past. Right, so every single moment from just 1 second ago, all the way back, letting that go. That's all finished. There's nothing you can do about it. And then letting go of the future, right? Letting go of expectation, letting go of any plans or designs, right? All of that energy and pressure, all of that. But then letting go of this particular moment as having to be any particular way. Just let that go too. Allow yourself to let go of the need to control the situation. Right? Don't control your mind. Allow yourself to let go of needing to figure anything out. And allow yourself to rest freely and openly in the nature of mind as it arises in this moment. And we'll sit this way for 12 minutes. And slowly bring yourself back to the group. And we'll return back to the text. So I'm kind of walking us back just a little bit. This point about Mahamudra meditation. Sraha says that essentially Mahamudra is not to be meditated on, right? It is not a that is not an object of focus, clearly. Right? He reminds us that the fully realized mind is like space, right? So mind is essentially vast, open, limitless, spacious in nature, able to hold everything that arises, can never be stained by whatever arises, whatever thoughts occur. As a ground of all, it holds everything like a womb. It's not meditated on, and therefore there's no activity in the mind. Right? Everything is just occurring. If there's no external agent causing something to happen, everything is able to just happen spontaneously on its own. So then he goes on to say the natural intrinsic state of the ordinary mind is unpolluted by contrived mentation. Right, which means that this ordinary mind, this just very natural, easeful experience of basic being, basic goodness, maybe we could say natural liberation, our own face, is unpolluted by uncontrived mentation in the sense that whatever is happening conceptually, right, whatever we're experiencing, whatever great ideas are happening, if we're writing a book or an article or considering systems of governance or anything, if we're an architect, an artist, a scientist, a politician, all of that stuff, right? All of the stuff that happens in cognitive mind is just happening, and it can just happen, right? But that is not really what is being focused on right here, right? What is being focused on is this awareness, this vastness that can contain even all of that. And that all of that, so to speak, that is occurring cannot possibly stand this, cannot possibly change this, cannot possibly disfigure this or imprison it. It is always free, it is always dynamic, it is vast. And he goes on to say that the naturally pure mind does not need alteration. Right? So there's nothing to do. Right? You don't need to dress yourself up in a particular way externally, and you certainly don't need to dress yourself up internally either. Right? Do not hold it. Do not release it. Just leave it as it is. Right? So we don't need to be tense. We don't need to be like intentionally loose either. We just need to be what we are. Right? Leave mind as it is. If there's no meditation in the unrealized mind, there is no meditator or object of meditation for those with realization. Right? And so what this really is too is just whatever is happening is what is happening. Right? And again, like we did last week, stop where you are and just look at some point in the room where you are. And notice all the form, right? Without zooming in on one particular thing, all the color. Notice the temperature. Notice your thought activity, qualities. Notice sound. There's nothing we need to add to this particular experience. Right? There's nothing we need to take away. The practice of Mahamudra is the practice of being in direct relationship with everything that arises all the time. And we don't need to be self-conscious about it. We just rest into this kind of hand in glove kind of experience of just everything just being there, experiencing, not objectifying, not projecting, just letting everything be natural. And he goes on to say that just as space cannot focus on space, emptiness cannot meditate on emptiness. The non-dual mind is like water and milk, the one taste of multiplicity, a continuous great bliss. So there's nothing to figure out. This goes back to, Tilopa's fifth nail. Don't figure anything out. Just be. Just let everything happen. So this is the kind of essence of it. It's in a way, it's a focused, passive practice, right? It's focused in the sense that all we're doing is remaining, aware. It's passive in the sense that it holds everything, right? Everything. This is why it's sometimes, you find these terms like the womb of space, for example. It's womb-like in its ability to be able to hold. Right? Is it a big womb? No. It defies words. It defies expectation. It defies role. It defies any conception. Right? And yet as humans, we need to be able to somehow convey what this kind of experience is like. Right? So it's womb-like. It's nurturing. How is it nurturing? Right? And this is important for us as practitioners to not just like check, nurturing, did that, this is what it's like, we actually need to kind of unpack this for ourselves, right? This is what the practice is. So the second part of the meditation, as Raha points out, is the supreme meditation that is never apart from non-meditation. Right? And so he says, in this way, always, throughout the 3 times, there's nothing to be done. Nothing to be done in the mind. There's this natural state free from extremes. It's free from the extremes of cultivation and free even from the extreme of meditation, where it's just being. And he says, don't hold the breath, don't bind the mind. So don't hold the breath, within this kind of milieu that he was coming from. Has a lot to do with like hatha yoga techniques, right? So there's a lot of breathing techniques, right? So he's like, don't hold the mind, don't get elaborate with your breathing. And similarly, with respect to um, binding the mind, right? Like a shamatha kind of practice. Shamatha is very good. It's good for allowing us to experience some kind of, quiescence, some kind of ease, right? But Mahamudra is not shamatha meditation, right? We're not intentionally trying to still anything. We're just trying to let it be. So don't control, as in don't control or modulate your breath, and don't bind your mind, right? Don't focus like a laser. Right? Just become the container itself. He goes on to say, leave the uncontrived mind be like a baby. If memories and thoughts arise, look at them themselves. Right? But not, he doesn't mean in this kind of like analytic way or in a kind of, microscopic way or especially a binary way, right? This is not like, oh, thought, there you are, I am here. What is our relationship? What is this all about? Right? No, it's just glance, you know, with awareness. Let awareness recognize whatever is happening lightly, gingerly. But we don't need to get so wrapped up in a particular kind of process. Don't think the water and the waves as separate. So when you go somewhere, maybe the ocean, and you're looking, can you separate the water from the waves? Of course not. Similarly, to begin to kind of, focus too much on things that are arising within the experience of mind doesn't make sense either. Right? We're just resting into the continuity of the entire thing, the isness of the whole thing. In this way, we've all been meditators our whole lives, even before we learned a particular meditation instruction, because it's just all happening. And so in this way, he says that the supreme meditation is free, is not separate, rather, I'm sorry, from non-meditation. Everything that arises within this container of the womb-like nature of mind. Right? So how could we even have the need to do anything? And so he says, do not meditate, because there's not even an atom of meditation. There's not an atom of meditation in Mahamudra, which is the non-activity of mind. Nothing to do. Don't worry. The supreme meditation, which is never apart from non-meditation, the innate non-duality, the taste of great bliss. Just like water poured into water has one taste. When one rests in this state in such a way, the attached mind that clings to focusing ceases. So we're really trying to let go of efforting. And I'll throw this out there to everybody. I think that this is, obviously, like, the instructions are easy. and Claude brought this up last week. This is easy, but then it's hard to do, and that's true. Um, and I do think that for us, post-industrial, post-capitalist, whatever weird system we happen to be living in right now, this is especially difficult for us because we're conditioned to produce, to do, to work, to just continue and continue and continue. So it's almost as if one arm is all built up and has this kind of gross musculature, and that's the arm of doing, 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 doing. And this other arm, the arm of being, is so underappreciated in our culture, right? And in the way that we've all been educated, in the way that we've been trained to be, right? So we need to come back to some kind of equilibrium. Stop doing. This is really let yourself drop out a little bit. Let yourself drop out with respect to your goals. Right? Everybody wants to live in the amazing kingdom up on the hill. It's all shiny, the Mahamudra kingdom, right? But we've been in it the whole time, and that's the thing that we don't tend to recognize. And so let go of the striving, let go of the overt focus. Maybe let go to recognize that this samsara that we're trying desperately to escape from is actually the basis of nirvana itself. And when we stop all of the chasing, when we stop all of the, myopia, the laser-like focus, the incessant need for things to be different than they actually are, then we actually kind of begin to get somewhere. right? So just like water poured into water has one taste, when one rests into this state in this way, the attached mind that clings to focusing begins to cease, settling into ease, settling into naturalness, non-effort. This is very hard for us, Westerns, whatever we are, who knows? I don't know what I am. And then this, of course, brings us to conduct. And this is something that we are also very focused on, in the West, ethics and conduct and things like this. So the first point is the unpredictability of Mahamudra conduct. And Sraha says, hey ho, what adoption or rejection would a yogin or yogini of natural non-duality have? Right? And he says, I neither grasp nor discard any phenomenon. I never say, you must do this. Right? So letting go. Really following, this is a place where we can use a little bit of logic, right? We can take this experience of the direct experience of mind itself, the direct encounter with all kinds of phenomenon. And just as we begin to kind of trust into our experience that all there is to do is practice with what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we think, back to what we feel, back to what we think, back to what we see, we experience, our senses, skandhas, etc. When we're really resting into this state, what is there to adopt and what is there to reject? Yes, we can always want the finer of all of these things. But when we recognize that our practice is really just about the direct experience, this, Rigpa flash of what's happening in the moment, what difference does it really make if it's very, very fine or very, very coarse? But that's not what the point is, right? It's not prosperity, Dharma, Mahamudra. It's just that I was giving this Paul Lama empowerment on Saturday, and I had also kind of made this promise to also kind of just describe how Paul Lama is this manifestation of Ati Yoga and Mahamudra. And I was describing her as like the very sharp edge of a knife, the knife that cuts. She is the experience of Rigpa, right? Rigpa awareness, right? Just cut. The moment of recognition, that freshness, that ease, that clarity. So in that moment, what really is there to grasp? What is there to push away? What is there to accept? What is there to reject? What is there to actually even say we need to do? So Saraha says, just as that jewel is unreal, the conduct of the yogin or yogini is also unreal. Though she speaks with a composite variety of chattering, the yogini's mind does not depart from singleness. There's not even a one existing in that singleness. And so, with the variety of outer aspects having no fixed basis, act like a madwoman. So I'm changing the genders here. Add like a mad woman, right? A mad yogini or yogin, unconfined, without a care, like a baby in whose conduct there is nothing to be done. And so just be in that moment. In that moment, which is all this is constantly. One moment, one moment, one moment, one moment, one moment. Just be like a baby. Be like a mad woman. Be like a madman. Be. Just be. Just be present. And let go of present. This is the conduct. This is what's most important. This is also a place of intense resilience. This is where we're able to act with wisdom and with compassion. True wisdom and true compassion, not an imposition of what we think it should be, right? Oh, it says here, compassion means this, so I must insert this activity into this situation. No, it means we're able to actually be, we're skillfully situated in the moment with what's truly happening. And when we're skillfully situated in the moment with what's truly happening, then of course, whatever arises from our activity is a manifestation of compassion, is a manifestation of wisdom. This is where this kind of spontaneity is important. And so Suraha goes on to say, this conduct prevents conditions from staining. He says, wondrous. The mind is like a lotus that grows in mud. There is no fault that can stain it. Though there is this bliss of eating and drinking and sexual union, though the body and mind can be severely pained, what different kinds of conduct are performed? Nothing will bind or free or stain this mind. Nothing binds or frees or stains this mind. And, so of course people get a little concerned. Oh, well, nothing. That means I can do anything. That's not the point of this. So the instruction is not for, Suraha's not saying this so that everyone can go out and be debaucherous. Right? The point is that this is kind of like a table that everybody is welcome at. Right? It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter what your caste is. It doesn't matter what your job function is. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you feel. It doesn't matter, again, where you've been. This holds everything. This holds everyone. It doesn't matter if you're high Tibetan. It doesn't matter if you're low American. It doesn't matter if you're high American. It doesn't matter if you're low Tibetan. It doesn't matter if you're from New Zealand. It doesn't matter if you're from Spain. It doesn't matter if you're from Mars. It doesn't matter if you're a ghost. It doesn't matter if you're a demon. Nothing can stain mind. Nothing can stain Rigpa. Nothing. And yet, who here has woken up either today or yesterday or the day before, feeling low, feeling stained, feeling less than, feeling like a mountain of work lay ahead of me? Nothing will bind or free or stain. The third part of the conduct is the spontaneous arising of compassion that is free from attachment and benefits others. And so Saraha says, in the carefree state of realization, one's own conduct, when ignorant beings are wretched, the power of overwhelming compassion causes tears to fall. I is swapped for others, and there is application to their benefit. And so what is being pointed out here is not that we have to consciously, basically practice Tonglen, right? We don't need to do that effort, in an effortful way. Once we begin to recognize the nature of our own mind, once we're able to recognize the fact that our essence is stainless, right? That it is vast, that it is constantly resourced, that it is luminous, that it is without limitation, then how can we not feel compassion for others who feel like they are limited, who feel like they are marked by some stain, who feel like they need purification? I need to be purified. I need to continue to purify. I can't possibly be enough. All it takes is a moment or two of settling into this, and our whole burden is completely lifted. We're able to touch into the natural state. And from there, this authentic compassion arises. Not what Saraha would argue is a contrived compassion. And again, this kind of cut and paste, like compassion, cutting this practice and putting it there, cutting out this aspiration from this prayer and applying it to this particular person's situation. When objects are analyzed, there is freedom from all conceptual designation. They become unreal, like a dream or an illusion. So then there is joy, no sadness. There's freedom from attachment. Just like a magician who creates illusions, who understands these illusions to be false. And through this, we're able to understand, through our own experience of the nature of mind, and through the constancy of returning back to watching the whole thing dissolve into this stainless experience, then we begin to understand that while beings are suffering, we all just need one little adjustment, right, to be able to see clearly, to be able to come back into direct relationship. It's so important. And it's also very interesting too, because this is exactly like, on those, when you're flying on a plane and they say, when the oxygen masks dangle down, put them on yourself first before putting them on someone else, right? So compassionate activity is wonderful, right? I don't think there's anybody here has a problem with compassionate activity, right? I know that to be true. And anybody watching this recording doesn't have any problem with compassionate activity. But non-skillful compassionate activity is problematic, right? It doesn't always help. It causes pain and suffering. We really benefit from stopping, slowing down, and experiencing our own mind first, putting that mask on ourselves. And so let's put our oxygen mask on. We can sit again. for the same amount of time, 12 minutes. And, just as you do this, allow yourself to notice what is, arising, what's happening in the meditation practice. And as you allow everything to rest, and perhaps you could say rest into the, everything settle into the womb-like nature of Rigpa or awareness, right? Just letting everything settle. Just notice how you're feeling, right? Notice your body. Notice the clarity of whatever is arising in the moment. Notice if there's any blissfulness or lack of blissfulness, but don't fixate. Notice if you feel attuned or not. And we'll sit like this for 12 minutes. And if it's helpful, do the same thing. We can rely on Tilopa's 6 nails, letting go completely of the past, and just dropping that. Letting go completely of the future, expectation, intentionality. Letting go of the present moment. Who cares? Letting go of control. Who cares? Letting go of the need to figure anything out. Let it go. And rest openly and freely in your natural luminosity. Rest openly and freely in your fundamental purity. Sit like this. And slowly you just come back to the group. And as you do, though, just consider the nature of this practice. Consider how personal it is, right? How this is really about liberating ourselves. And of course, as we work to be present for others, to help liberate others from the way that we experience samsara. And as we experience samsara, well, I mean, the more that we engage this kind of practice, the more that we see that of everybody here, and I see there are however many people, I don't know the exact number, but we're all suffering. We're all in samsara. We're all in it together, and then we're also experiencing it very separately too. You know, and so this practice has, and I kind of jokingly said this during like the year-long Hatha Yoga program last year. It has a way of ruining the practitioner in a sense, in the sense that this is just so right here, right now, you. Right? This is not necessarily about all coming together and chanting a liturgy. Right? This is about unzipping, the, our own identity, our own self, and resting into the spaciousness of who we truly are. It's such a beautiful thing. But also just I feel like that it's important to recognize how personal this is. Right? So before we go any further, I wanted to see if anybody has any questions or thoughts or things they want to share, or Ekta is quick to raise their hand. Bring it. Oh, you're muted.
I said it's because I've been sitting with this and I've just
Oh,
wrote
yeah,
about
yeah.
this. So basically, my practice was very strongly rooted in the Theravada tradition, and my practices were all very, mind training and vipassana and anapana, and very helpful, like life changing perspective. But what happened was that after a point, it became very strenuous on me. Like it felt very hard on my mind and body. So initially, I felt like lot of burdens just lift, but after a point it started becoming difficult. And so I compare Mahamudra with and I feel shamatha is kind of like that, but the difference between Mahamudra and those techniques for me at this point in my life is, like in Theravada they often talk about training a wild elephant, and it used to feel like a pressure, like there was so much onus on me to do that training, and sometimes it was overwhelming based on the kind of pain or thoughts or anger that was coming up. So now when I come to Mahamudra, the analogy that works for me is I'm just watching a pot of boiling water come to settle. And the ease, like I can do nothing for this pot of water, and it's just, between the wild elephant and the pot of water brings in ease, brings in that safety, that patience, that tolerance for what is, like, so it might be like really bubbling some days it's just like super hot but not bubbling, and it just allows me to stay. And I just wanted to say that I feel like a burden has been lifted off me when I do this practice, especially. So yesterday was my mother's 22nd death anniversary. It was a heavy day. And so, like the thing that you said about practice and not practice is the same thing. And I felt very dissociated. I was in bed for most of the day. And I wanted to get up and light a lamp and do all these things, but my body felt heavy. So I was just in my between my chair and my bed, just laying there. And it felt to me like it was Mahamudra, but I was not doing meditation. So today, what you said really resonated for me, that this is not a practice that we are doing. It's just there, and it's the same as being not in practice. And the the mindfulness with which I allowed it to happen, that was reassuring. That there have been times in my life I've behaved in ways, where I had no knowledge of why what was happening. And then still the solution is the same, to not do anything, but just the awareness of that phenomenon coming and going was very relieving. So that's me for today.
Thank you, Ekta. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything I need to say other than thank you. And I mean, I'll just say one thing that I think is helpful, perhaps, is how easy it is for meditation instructions to cause a dualistic split between the meditator and that which is being experienced, right? So to control your thoughts like a wild elephant, the wild elephant of your thoughts, or to settle, all of a sudden it feels like me, mine. Oh, me, my thoughts. I need to settle them. I need to control them. I need to, find the spaciousness in this. And there is no you, yours. There's no me, mine. There's no you, yours. That's not what it's about. I mean, falling into that is part of the bigger problem that we're going through every day, every second of every day. So this, just letting this pot of boiling water settle on its own in the time that it will, or in the time that it takes, is really the practice. But it will settle. Everything settles. Everything settles into luminosity. Everything settles into perfection. Everyone is able to eventually recognize this. There's a natural propensity for mind to self-liberate. Everything self-liberates. This is the relinquishment of the doer is so hard. I brought it up last week, and I'm proud to say I'm not any further on the translation of this commentary on Yutuk's Mahamudra. But again, coming back to this one term, Rang Shar Rang Jol, self-arising, self-liberated. Everything is self-arising, everything is self-liberated. It just, and there is an element of having to just put away the person who has to do the work and just rest into that. Everything, so I'm in Brooklyn right now, and there's always a considerable amount of traffic, sounds on the street I live on. Every one of those self-arises, every one of those self-liberates. Every single thing. Each one of our thoughts arises. Each one of them is liberated upon arisal. It's only when we're like, hey, but wait a minute, what was that? Oh, I don't like the sound of that one. Or that one's too loud. Or that sounds like, that sounds like our car. Whatever. Right? Then we start creating all this work. It's exactly the same. Just let everything come and go. What other thoughts or feelings or complaints might exist? Okay.
A while back, in a previous teaching, you talked about the mind, about thoughts going across the mind like birds across the sky, and that they don't leave a trace. Your mind work, and how do you put those two things together? Like the habits of our mind I just get confused about how those two things, if you've got the thoughts going across the mind and not leaving a trace, but then it seems to me that thoughts become habits.
Mm-hmm.
And you can become, thoughts can become a bit. So can you say anything about that?
Sure. Yeah. And so I don't know if everybody heard as clearly. So I'm just going to kind of repeat the question as I understand it and heard it. So the question is in the past I brought up, and it was a line from one of Shabkar's um, songs in Flight of the Garuda, that thoughts are like birds, flying across the sky, and you never see a bird's trail leave a stain, on the sky, and it's the same with thoughts. And so the question then becomes, what of habits, right? And what of this kind of, or we could even say kleshas, right? Because kleshas are kind of basically like a, emotional kind of cluster that more or less are, propagate themselves into habits. And so even then, I mean, this is the thing, right? Even then, the mind remains unstained. The our point of orientation can be completely fraught, right? And north is still north, south is still south, east is still east, and west is still west, right? Like and this is hard, and maybe this is also hard for people with conditioning, rooted in kind of like this idea of original sin, right? Where there is this kind of like permanent mark that we must somehow cleanse or remove. Or we just read Treasure Island to the boys, and so the dark spot, on their hand, the pirate's hand when they're going to be punished, right? The black spot. So even habituation doesn't stain the mind. Of course, this is especially hard for us in this very kind of crime and punishment kind of world system of there needs to be, how can we just let habituation, illusory habituation. There's the illusory individual that's not even real. Their habits aren't real. Their proclivities aren't real. All of this is just a big, kind of knot in a muscle, right? And so then the question is how can we let Mahamudra be the kind of massage needed to soothe habituation, right? To just let everything go. This is not a disciplinary practice. It's not a practice of needing to separate out the bad eggs from the good eggs. This is it's like an all-inclusive practice. Everything is invited. Everything can be. We don't need to push away one thing from another, because in that open space, everything self-soothes, everything self-liberates. And this is hard. Like, it's hard for us to even acknowledge that for ourselves. Somebody name an emotion that's been hard for them today, this week. Or, I mean, this week just more or less started, but
Jealousy.
jealousy. Okay, yeah. How about another one? You can type one in too if you don't want your name or your voice associated. Just type it pain. Yeah. Okay, pain. Who else? Just
Anger.
anger. Yeah. Okay. Craving. Anybody?
Tightness.
Uh-huh. What else?
Fear.
Mm-hmm. Acceptance.
Anxiety.
Anxiety. How about a juicy one? does anyone, oh, I guess you can't type in anonymously. That's the problem. So I'm going to type in then. Right, we're kind of on the same page. Um, right, so all of the, like, things we feel, right? Like, do we need to, can we just let these things play out, right? Not in the sense of, oh, let me like let my horniness play out, or my lust play out, or my rage, or my, and go out and hurt beings. No, but within the context of our meditation practice, just let these things aerate, right? So we're just letting them be experienced, and then watching, like, this is like, Paul Lama's knife, like, or the knife that Paul Lama is, like that liberation that happens in the moment, like just letting things be liberated. Yeah, pettiness. My fingernails are so much nicer than Eric's fingernails. And my hair is so much longer. The the self-liberation. This is so hard for us to get our minds around. And we don't have to get our minds around it. Self-arising, self-liberated, self-arising, self-liberated, self-arising, self-liberated. This is the nature of all phenomenon. This is the nature of thought activity. This is the nature of our problems. Right? And the practice of Mahamudra is just coming back to this over and over and over again, and really definitively learning this from ourselves, right? This is not learning it just from me or from some text, right? The essence of Mahamudra is, or the real kind of, where the rubber meets the road in terms of us really truly grasping this, comes from just sitting with what is. So sitting with our habits, sitting with our assumptions, our judgments. And I don't mean sitting and stewing in them. When they arise spontaneously. As they arise, let them self-liberate. Right? We don't need to hold on to these things and, say, oh boy, there goes, Eric with his pettiness again, or there goes Justin with his lust again, or there goes somebody with their horniness, or their acceptance, or their pain, or all of their good eggs, or, whatever else everyone who is afraid of actually sharing the things that they actually feel, didn't do. Just letting it be. Like, how hard is that? Pretty hard, especially when we're so indoctrinated by good and bad, in all of these binary systems. Does that sound crazy or weird?
Can I share something?
Please, yeah.
Yeah. I'm a therapist, so and a chaplain, and so I do a lot of sitting with people, and able to use that as an opportunity to rest, in my understanding of Mahamudra. And then and so there's often been kind of this continuity building over months, where I'm in a deeper place inside myself and my body. It's amazing how it just feels like the subtlety and the nuance of that somatic deepening experience of Mahamudra just feels like it's just like can kind of keep going and going and going and going. Like I've heard Lama Rod talk about, like trust fall, like this idea of kind of like a trust fall. And sometimes Mahamudra feels like that to me. Yesterday, I drove in, it was snowing in the morning, and I unknowingly parked in front of someone's garage. And so after like a long day of seeing clients and it was dark, it's like 6 o'clock, and I went outside and, you know, a lot of people going through a lot of intense things, but I still felt like I was able to kind of rest and allow, you know, the play of phenomena, and just feel this kind of hum of, yeah, just like a subtle hum of, I guess, what to me is bliss. And then I walked outside and I saw that my car wasn't there. It had been towed. And it was just this moment normally where it would have completely undone me in the past. Just like, you know, holy fuck, like it's snowing, it's 6 o'clock, my car's been towed. But I had this total different response. It was this really amazing experience. And I really felt like it was because of my practice, you know, where I was just like outside and I kind of laughed and it just felt light. Not that, you know, heaviness. I mean, there's been plenty of heaviness today. But it was just like, you know, it was snowing, it was beautiful. And so, you know, for me, it's like having moments like that. And then like today I've had this huge, like my neck's like super tight. I slept at a friend's house, and, you know, how to be with that then, you know, because there's this like feeling of like, you know, wanting to go back to that steady, blissful place. And then sometimes there's this experience of them happening simultaneously. So like, you know, the crank in the neck and that bliss. But there's also something that feels really courageous to me about this practice, like deeply courageous to kind of say, even here, I'm going to sink into this trust fall. It was
Yeah,
just kind of rambling.
no, thank you, Sarah. It was great. It was great. Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, you know, especially with respect to the last point about the courageousness of it, yeah, the courageousness of not judging, right? The courageousness of not controlling, the courageousness of just letting everything be, right? The courageousness of, if we are indeed trying to truly liberate our minds, like the question becomes like, how can we all of a sudden begin to experience a particular thing? And so this is kind of going back to the question, especially about the pattern, right? Patterning, habit, etc. To be able to, you know, find ourselves experiencing a pattern or habit or whatever, klesha, and then villainize that, right? Or need to smite it, right? Or need to control it, or need to, you know, these are all, like, I understand the desire to want to do this, but if we're really trying to liberate our own mind, right? How does the exertion of that level of control actually lead to liberation, right? Or is that just a reinvestment in this binary system that is plaguing us to begin with, or that we're stuck with it, right? Just letting it, let it self-liberate, right? And this doesn't mean, again, you know, go out, be a jerk to people, cause harm, right? It means that, yes, if we do cause harm and we are a jerk to somebody unintentionally, then we should repair, you know, notice, recognize, and repair, right? And then keep going, right? I don't know the benefit of creating a tremendous amount of self-harm around, you know, I used to work in corrections, right? New York City Department of Corrections. I don't know how or what relevance correcting ourselves actually has in meditation, right? Rather than correcting what is arising or what isn't arising, what if we just opened the gates and let all of these things out and let them be free, right? And in that moment of freedom, and the freedom is experience being met with awareness, there is an infinite amount of not only bliss, but wisdom and compassion, knowledge. All of these things arise in that moment. right? But if we're going to push things away because we fear them, or we're anxious of them, about them, or we don't trust them, then we're, all we're doing is propagating a fear-based relationship to our own mind, right? A fear-based relationship to appearance. And this is the same appearance that we just have to be through day in and day out and day in, and then we die, and then we shift into another kind of appearance, and then we go through that appearance, and then we become reborn or something, right? And then appearance, 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 appearance. Like, when are we going to stop fighting with the direct experience of whatever is arising? Like, can we begin to, stop fighting with ourselves even? So this kind of like, this is a bit, this is like, a submissive practice. If we're going to have to like put it into like, like BDSM kind of like, phraseology, this is like, we're bottoming reality. We're not just freebasing it. We're just letting reality happen, right? So anyway, with that nice controversial way of ending this, may we dedicate the merit to continuing to all bottoming practitioners, all beings. May all beings be able to recognize the stainless luminosity that is their true mind. May they be instantaneously liberated. May all practitioners, just like these gathered here today, be able to be kind to one another, kind to themselves, resilient, open, free, gracious. May all activity be Dharma activity. May it spontaneously arise to meet the needs of all beings. And may Mahamudra flourish in the hearts of all. So thank you so much, and take care of yourselves, and I will see some of you soon and some of you sooner. Be well.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.